Hi, I'm John with BitSize Tech, and today we're going to be talking about Hashicorp Terraform. This is an intro video to the rest of my Hashicorp Terraform course where I'll teach you what is Terraform and why you should use it. So, join me in the rest of the video as we go over those things. Alright, so the first thing we're going to talk about is what is Terraform. Terraform is a tool that does infrastructure as code. So as you know it, most standard practices for spinning up and spinning down infrastructure requires manual processes, whether this be in AWS, GCP, or Azure, or even on-prem. So you have a load of hardware that you need to actually turn on for your services or systems to run on. So many administrators have to manually go into these tools and designate that. So how do we make that better? What's the best way to make our lives easier, more productive, and faster? Well, there are many tools out there that actually allow you to automate management of configurations on systems. So you're talking about Puppet, Ansible, Salt, Chef. These things will actually let you manage that hardware, but it's not really a codified way to make things faster or simpler to spin up and spin down 1,000 servers at once. It lets you manage those servers very easily, but it doesn't let you spin them up easily. Now, Ansible does a little bit of this. It does have some providers for AWS, for example. I believe it does for GCP and Azure as well. I'm very familiar with Ansible, but I don't use it specifically because it's more configuration management, right? Like there's a state that server's in. I want to make sure that it's a web server or a database server, etc. So I'm going to use Ansible to manage that. Now with Terraform, what you're doing is you're connecting into those providers, and it's cloud agnostic. So say you have a fleet of web servers and you want them in AWS for specific availability reasons, but maybe you want your database servers in GCP, Google Cloud Platform, because you prefer their management of their databases. Well, with something like Terraform, what you can do is hook into those APIs and spin up 20 web servers over here in AWS and 15 databases over here and actually change their config to connect to each other easily and programmatically and repeatably, actually. So it makes things more repeatable, easier to use. You can now integrate into your CI/CD pipeline. So for people who aren't familiar with that, that's your GitHub, GitLab, anything, Git related, Bitbucket. So you can actually make changes to your infrastructure as code. So you can constantly revise. It's aware of the state. It can then, make changes to that state. And if it sees anything wrong, like you're missing hardware that was there before, it'll spin up a new one, right? So that's essentially what Terraform does in a nutshell. Now, what's the benefit to this? A, you can make sure all your servers are always set up the same way every time. You can also provision 100 servers at once without having to manually do it. You're saving time, you're saving effort. It's easier to do in some cases. Real world example is, you have ECS, Elastic Container Services from AWS. I don't know if you've ever set up anything in Fargate with ECS. It's not hard, but it takes a while, right? Like something could take you, 30 minutes if you're waiting on things to provision. You've got to sit there, you've got to wait for this thing to come up, then you click over here and do this. Now you can use CloudFormation, but you're now locked into that environment. Well, I can just program a thing once and let it run. I've done that a couple of times at work where we've had processes that were taking us, an hour or two, and we're doing the same thing every time. We just don't want that hardware always up. So Terraform is also a great tool when you're testing things because you can easily spin up things, and then because it tracks that state, you can spin them down without having to manually go and turn it off yourself. You just issue one command and everything that's in that state file is now turned down. So these are some of the main concepts. These are some of the main benefits, but we'll go a little bit into that. I'll go ahead and do a small cursory glance of Terraform. So we're going to take a look at what it is, how it works, and give you a little bit of brief into the setup. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so let's get started. We're going to take a look at an AWS provider. So Terraform has this thing called a registry. These are public registries. People will write code to connect to their API platforms or just custom platforms. You can also create your own providers. And this is the way that you would use Hashicorp to actually spin up and spin down stuff. So you will import a provider, and that provider will then allow you to manipulate things on that platform. I know this is a little abstract right now. We're not going to get into it as of yet, but this is the kind of documentation you'll look at. You can see it has a very similar format to JSON. This actually uses HCL, Hashicorp Configuration Language. So that's the first thing you're going to know. You can use JSON. They do allow a JSON format. But they came up with HCL to be a little bit more human readable. So just for, getting started, we'll take a look. See, we're announcing Terraform. So that's a starting block. Everything's done in blocks. We're telling Terraform, here's your required provider. We're going to say AWS equals, we're going to say the source of that provider. And then we can designate versions. So this one right here says anything 3 and up, not going to 4. They have different delineators. We'll go over that in the actual course. But we're saying any valid provider is 3 to 3.9, essentially. If you said 3.1, it'd be 3.1 to 3.9. And then within those providers, you're going to set specifics. So if I want to spin up infrastructure in a specific region, I would set that in the provider block. So I'm telling it what providers we need for this, where I'm going to set it up, and then that's when I can actually start to create resources. So this is a very basic concept of HashiCorp. Now this is just a brief overview to get you understanding some of the concepts. So we're going to look at these more in depth when we go through the initial setup process. So this is just something I wanted to go over. What you're going to also need, which is very useful, is if you have VS Code, right, you're actually going to want to install the Terraform provider. I'm going to go through how to actually install Terraform. There are multitudes of ways. For this tutorial, we're going to do it the manual way. You can also install it via an apt package or yum package or homebrew or even chocolatey. But we'll do it the manual way just so you get pretty familiar with it. So those are kind of the two things you're going to need for this course. We're going to go over how to initialize a directory, what a provider block is, adding users even within your providers when you spin up code. We're going to do some tests for that. We're also going to do setting up an instance, right? And then we'll start to go into the more in-depth concepts. Now, I've actually recently gotten Terraform certified. I just got my Hashicorp Terraform Certified Associate, which is a handful to say. So, Terraform certified. So I'll try and teach you the concepts that I learned while doing the training in order to get that certification. But again, this is just a very brief overview of what's to come. What we're going to do, we're going to teach you about Terraform state, right? How it tracks that infrastructure that you spun up, how to turn that infrastructure up, and how to turn it down. So you can have it on and then you can have it off. You can even set things to be tainted or untainted. Now it's actually referred to as replaced. They're depreciating taint. It is a concept of just this infrastructure wasn't set up quite right. Something happened to the process. Please replace it the next time. So it'll actually destroy that thing and turn up a new one. So we'll also go into a little bit of, how to actually connect to different providers, run things in two different environments. I am going to be using Linode in a lot of cases because AWS does have a free tier, but Linode is cheaper by far. The free tier is only if you sign up for an account within that first year. Otherwise, it can get quite expensive. So just to make sure you know the cost, a single small server, which is all we're going to really need for this course, in many instances, is just going to be like $5, right? If you can spend $5, do it. If not, you can just follow along, right? You don't have to actually do these things. This is just to help you get the concepts and understand. So that way, if you're, looking at using this tool for work, you're a little bit more prepared to do that. So thanks for joining me today. Again, this is just an intro to this course. So I would love to see you in the rest of it, and stay tuned for more videos.